Here we can see one of the orchids with flowers on it. These are recently planted, so they don't have many flowers. This is called Miss Wakam. It's the national flower of Singapore. It's actually very common in most tropical areas. It's the most common of the Vanda orchids. It was a hybrid made in 1893, or first bloomed in 1893. Here we'll see some flowers of the giant crinum lily. They smell delicious. These posts are actually, most of them are planted upside down. They're old wood posts that had died from old age of what's called the madero negro, or blackwood or tree. They call it madre de cacao, or cacao mother tree. And they have a very rot resistant heartwood, so I've planted them as posts to plant orchids on. Over there we can see another one of the orchids. As the blooms pass, they turn white, they fade and turn white, which you can see there. You can see this lily is taller than I am, very big. Here's another one. This one, the blooms are just starting. Very pretty, very nice smell. Here's another flower stalk coming out. Basically, a flower stalk comes out with each new leaf. You can see the date palms over there. Up there, you can't tell them, but we have, let's see, Sancoya, a type of wild anona, which hasn't produced yet. It probably needs cross-pollination. You've got an old tangerine tree, arasaboy, which is a sour fruit that makes a delicious drink. A little tree with smooth whitish bark there is allspice, which is really nice. I like allspice. Make it into tea. I put it in all the pancakes and everything. This is a natural rock patch here, basically. You can see the nice rock. That's about 5 feet tall. There's an old plant of the lilies. And there's some more dragon fruit on those posts. There's the patch of pejevalle, or peach palms, and some old coconut palms. I planted all those from seed about 28 years ago. Over here we'll see them more, but I have planted what we call itabo. It's a yucca tree that gets a large fat root at the bottom. This line of yucca trees here is for local Costa Rican orchids. So here we have different local species, and they're just recently planted, but they seem to do real good on the itabo trees. On that side there, they're not blooming. Only one has bloomed so far, but I have more or less a collection of plumerias, which have very pretty flowers and nice smell. I believe it's what they use in Hawaii for leis, the flower necklace. Here's some of the nursery trees that we have to get planted out. Jumbo langsats, some tarap, there's loquat, here are jambolan and some other ones. You can see the orchids probably there on that stump. I put the taller orchids, 1 or 2 of them, and then several of these smaller ones, which are hybrid of those tall ones, with another pretty orchid. Here's a nursery of achacha fruit, or achachairu, which I hope to plant in a plantation. There's enough here to plant at least a hectare plantation. Over here are a orchid native to the drier parts of Costa Rica, but it's adapted well here. And I think I'm going to have at least one flower stalk. There you can see that bud in the center of the leaves. That should be a flower stalk later this year, probably next year, in the dry season in several months. Very pretty flowers. These can cross with the cattleyas. These are schomburgkias. There I have planted gourd trees. The object of those gourd trees, there's another one there, is I have vanilla planted on some old cacao trees, and I plan to move vanilla over here to have, this is my generally spicy area. This is the spice collection. Here we have, excuse me, here we have black pepper planted at the base of these. These are new from seed, but they'll climb up these trees. This is called guitite, which is famous for growing orchids and things on. This here is actually a cloves tree. which are very hard to find. They're probably no one else in Costa Rica has them. I got these from seeds from a friend from Puerto Rico. Up here we have some yucca plants, right here, what we call yucca. Cassava, what they make tapioca out of, has a starchy root. Not very nutritious, but it can fill your stomach and keep you from dying. Good, as I say, good famine food. These are young macadamia nuts from seed, planted very close together. Most of this is for variety selection. I'm going to select the best of these and see what we can do with them. That's a new variety, different than anything else in Costa Rica. This is a grumachama tree. However, they seem to almost never produce anything here. I've got another couple of young trees from a different source that are probably more likely to produce, so I will see. They're supposed to be like a nice little cherry. I've seen them, but I've never eaten them. Coming back down here, here's a tree fern. I brought these. There are wild locally, but I actually brought these and planted them. This has an orchid growing on the tree fern, which has nice flowers. It's not in bloom right now, though. These small orchids here on these stumps are typical of what they call the semiterete hybrids of the vandas. That is a strap leaf vanda with what I call the pencil leaf vanda. They call it the terete leaf vanda, which is one of these. When you cross the two, then you get a medium-sized plant that is more resistant to rain and disease, and probably will tend to bloom all year round. So they should be very nice. I have close to 1,000 of those. About half of them, 2/3 of them are planted out now. Here comes the row of Itabo plants. These don't have the orchids on them yet, but they will have. Here's some more of these lilies. I have some, you may recognize these painted leaf plants. Let's see, I can't remember what they're called. They're wild here, those just come up. Here's some vanda hybrids, but these are not fungus resistant, so they don't bloom very often. Lots of times the flower stalk will get fungus and die back. These are different lilies. I'm not sure what color these are, probably white. This is a large white lily. It's bloomed a few times. You can see the new bloom stalk coming out there. Here's an azalea. Azaleas bloom over several months, but not very many at a time, so they're not as attractive as they would be at higher altitude where it's cooler. Over here we have more of the nursery collection, and most of these are, the small tiny ones are mangosteen fruits. These are young langsat trees, and these larger ones are different varieties and species of durian. Here's a leftover cloves tree. These are guava, especially a creamy white guava that appears not to get worms, which are the problem with guavas here. These are rambutan. These are young allspice trees, some langsats, young achachairu trees, and here's a select palm, which has more or less apple-tasting fruits. Very interesting. I hope you don't get dizzy with all this going around here. We're back over here, probably about where we were, but this is a collection of vanda orchids that I bought from a lady whose husband had died. And they all had name codes, but she doesn't have the codes, so none of them have names that we know, but many of them are named hybrids. And they're recuperating here, growing pretty good. Here's some more things in the nursery. This is Arachnus or scorpion orchid. This is probably the hybrid Magioi, and I'm using this one to cross with other kinds of the vanda family to get taller, vinier orchids with harder flowers. They're more waxy, more sun-resistant, longer lasting. Here's some orchids. These are actually from the famous Charles Lancaster. This is a Vanda suavis, which is white with purple spots, very pretty. Blooms only in the dry season, but lots of times multiple blooms, multiple bouquets. These are capsules that I have pollinated to send to the laboratory of crosses that I want. This is on an old piece of an old Madero Negro stump. You might see a reddish leaf lily down there. That's actually very similar to the giant lilies. It will get very big, but it produces seeds, whereas the biggest ones do not produce seed. These are another kind of Stromburkia, native to not quite as dry areas. We can see these flower stalks starting. You can see the old flower stalks here. These have a bouquet of real crinkly, reddish or brownish purple small flowers. They're in the Cattleya or Cattleya family, and they're actually very pretty. And this is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to have 5 flower stalks. Last year it had 2. That's a good sign. Over there, there's no flowers on them, but I have Gloriosa lilies, a couple of different kinds. You can see the big leaves back there. That's a bread nut tree, the seeded variety of breadfruit. It just happened to, I happened to plant it there and never dug it up. Okay, we're getting closer to the center of the farm. This level is where someday we want to build our house. This covered structure here is where someday we want to have our carport and garage. Right now it's just kind of a work area for the farm. This is a working farm, so everything is in progress, basically. Okay, we're going to look out here towards the road, and then we're going to go up here a little. And here's one thing I love about the farm is there's our mountain. That mountain is probably about 800 or 900 meters high there. It's higher on up there. But it's high and steep, full of natural forest, of course, with a very tall waterfall right over there. We can't see the waterfall right now because it's covered by the trees, but the waterfall is about 270 meters, about 800 feet, something like that, 800 feet tall. Very neat. It's very nice to go up there. Hard work, but there's a nice trail to go up. Okay, these are what we call, this is Roystonia regia, which is actually very common in the tropics, the Cuban royal palm. We can see some sort of Asian fan palm behind it, coconut there. Then we see what are actually ornamental palms beside to the right of the coconut. That whole area there, flat next to the road, has about, I believe, about 60 of these ornamental palms, what they call Christmas palm. But those are actually planted there as a support for strings or lines. That's going to be one of the major orchid gardens here. The orchid crosses that I'm making, most of them will be able to stand that amount of sun and should grow fine there between these palms. The tall tree there in the middle, going up into the sky a little, is the only teak tree that we have left. I planted a line of teak trees, and I have the logs there ready to cut into boards, but I left that one. I hate to cut everything. I like to leave something. And the other ones were along the road where they could fall on the road, but this one is safe here. These ponds, as you can't really tell, there's a stream of water there that comes from the creek, and there's one pond, a canal that goes there and go over to that area which does not have water. This one here is partially filled, but it's covered with duckweed, which we use for feed for the tilapia. You might be able to see there about in the center a tree with red fruits. That's a rambutan tree in full production. To the right are 1, 2, 3, 4 mangosteen trees, which are producing right now. Close toward me from them are salak palm, which tastes pretty much like apple with pineapple. And there's a couple of boxes with young salak trees in them, the leftovers from a lettuce patch that my neighbor had. You can see the dam we made there. All this was done with a backhoe. We'll go on down there later. Here's a little tree which is actually a macadamia tree, but it's basically a dwarf. The branching habit is much closer together than the other ones that came from the same batch of seeds, so I planted it here to watch it. Hopefully we'll have dwarf macadamia tree. And this is tetraphylla. It should have pink flowers. These are a terrestrial orchid. Fias tankervilli, something like that, which are very pretty. They happen to not be blooming now, but they do bloom quite a bit. Over here is a cactus tree. These are thornless cactus, and probably the ones you could eat. Cactuses actually do find in the almost anywhere in the humid tropics, even if it's not dry. Here's nursery under a mango tree of lots of different things. I won't describe them all. Some things I brought from Brazil, white zapotes tree, a bunch of young durian trees, cacao, Garcinia tinctoria for grafting mangosteen family trees onto, some pedalae. Over here is a very pretty orchid that I brought from, it's evidently native to Costa Rica from higher altitude, but it makes nice bouquets of lavender flowers up in the top. We'll see how well it does here. This is outside of its climate, but it's seems to be doing okay. This orchid here is also very common in the tropics. See if you can see the flowers. Well, there's one down here closer. Here's the flower. This is Arundina graminefolia. It's actually, for example, in Borneo, it's probably the most common flower in the country. It grows along all the road cuts in the country. This is actually appears to be a better variety than the common one there. It grows taller and has more flowers and appears to live longer. It's like a selected variety. Along both sides here of this path we have again the yucca trees, Itabo, and these are planted recently with orchids. Everything to my right side are Asian orchids, and these are tied on with strings, but they're making new roots along the Itabo and seem to be doing good. These are a small one. These will be bright yellow. Let's see, Mocara, cross of 3 different genera, and these are Rhincostylus gigantea, red ones. These will be very pretty. They're still pretty small. Here's a papaya plant from seed from Thailand, which we'll see how it does here. These being from Asia, this side, these are also these are dendrobiums. They're just starting to put new roots and fasten on here. Here's more vandas. Here's a vanda with flowers almost ready to open. These are still young. They will get bigger later. We can see the new roots where they're catching on. See those? That's nice. I think we're going to have a good system. These are more dendrobiums. Here's a... I'm trying to remember the names. I know it, but I can't remember. This is a vanda. This is a cross between a yellow one and Vanda cerulean. These are about 4 inches across, not especially big, but I think they get bigger as the plants get older also. You can see the new roots coming out there. Back here, I like planting things in tires because it's a way to control the weeds and get better drainage. This is a brown turkey fig, which has produced 2 good figs here. The figs that they have in Costa Rica are terrible, so I'm trying to get and propagate better varieties. These next 9 figs are actually grew from seed, which I'm calling golden turkey because they're light-colored, really good figs from Turkey. And they go dormant. They'll lose these leaves, and then new leaves will come back. Here's one that went dormant completely. I have actually true lilies in with these, Lilium. These are young, what they call the Holy Spirit or the Dove orchid. It's a terrestrial orchid from Panama with tall stalks of white flowers with a dove form on them. Here's one of the lilies going to bloom. These are a wild orchid, native on the rocks in the river, that put up stalks of little purplish flowers in the dry season, but they're very pretty. Here's some kind of cattleya on a piece of wood. You can see the new roots. I hope that they look like they're doing okay. Okay. Here's actually a grapevine. This is under a roof. We have too many fungus, so I actually grow things under the roof to not have fungus on the leaves. Here we can see some of the orchid greenhouse. If you look back in there, you can see a very pretty one. That is Cattleya let's see. Cattleya Casceliana alba is one, and that is, I'll think of it in a minute, okay? We'll go look at some of these orchids. There's a young Pulosan tree from air layers, and here are macadamia nuts from seed. Last year was the first year we really had decent production of macadamia nuts. Here's some of the orchids. These are the hybrids that I made here on the left. You can see I grow them in this case in roof tiles with pieces of roof tile chunks, and they do pretty good with, I try to fertilize them once a week. Here we're up to the Cattleya orchid. Very pretty. It smells really good. These are getting a little bit past, but they're very nice. These are young Cattleya orchids in trays, growing them out. There's some that are still in the bottles. I haven't had time to take them out. Here's more Cattleyas in trays. Over here are almost all Vanda type in trays, in tejas, in roof tiles. These Vanda and Cattleya and another Vanda are actually on what I call sausages cut from coconut trunks, which work fairly good. Out in the rain they won't, they would stay too wet, but under a roof they work fairly good. Here's a Erides, I believe. Yes, Erides. Hasn't bloomed for me yet, but I hope it will. These are Laelia rubescens, I believe it is. Very pretty pink flowers, native to Costa Rica. Here's some more of these where I've been pulling these out to take them out to plant on the yucca trees, so that it's kind of a disorder here. But I'll take more out and then reorganize, okay? And over there is part of our cabin, and we'll go to somewhere else and take some more pictures.